So have you ever come across that term shadow government and maybe, just kind of rolled your eyes? Thought it was pure conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, it definitely has that reputation, doesn't it? Images of smoke-filled rooms, secret plots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if I told you some specific sources claim they have the details, like
Mm.
precise info on an alleged operation working right now to, well, undermine political power?
And that's exactly what we're going to get into today. We're doing a deep dive centered on this one particular video. It's from a source called Right Wing News.
Okay.
And the title is pretty direct. Still think Obama's shadow government is conspiracy theory.mp3. Now, this video, it doesn't just make these claims in a vacuum. It actually points to articles from Constitution.com and the New York Post as its evidence.
Right. So it's cited in other media. And just to be super clear up front, our mission here, well, it's really just to unpack what these specific sources are saying. We're aiming to help you, the listener, pull out the main arguments, understand the perspective they're presenting, and sort of see the nuggets of knowledge as they see them without us weighing in on whether it's right or wrong. We're not endorsing, not refuting.
Just laying it out. We're your guides through this particular set of information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. What do these sources actually allege?
Well, the video kicks off right away. The presenter calls himself the voice of reason, sets a really serious tone, almost alarming,
Okay.
talking about systemic, deeply troubling problems. And then, boom, Obama is up to some serious no good. It's very direct.
Wow. Okay. No easing into it then.
Not at all. The presenter then immediately points to that Constitution.com article, the one titled, "Is Obama's Shadow Government Real?"
Yeah.
And then answers the question for the listener. Yes. Very. So right there, bang, the core premise is established as fact by the source. It's fascinating how quickly they lay that groundwork.
And from there, how do they start building on that? You mentioned other articles.
Yeah, so the video, citing that Constitution.com piece, talks about the author of that article. Apparently, this author used to ignore these kinds of shadow government claims.
Ah, the skeptic turned believer angle.
Precisely. The article says the author's mind was changed after listening to the Sean Hannity program. Hannity apparently detailed things pointing to Obama actively working against the Trump administration.
And did they give examples?
Well, the source mentions Michael Flynn's resignation. That's presented as proof. The article's conclusion, after hearing Hannity and also Paul Sperry from the New York Post, was that these ideas, they weren't fantasies anymore, but actually reasonable claims. It's quite a narrative arc they present there.
Linking Flynn's resignation directly to this alleged operation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else? You mentioned the New York Post.
Right. So the video pulls a quote attributed to the New York Post saying former President Obama mentioned he was heartened by anti-Trump protests.
Okay. Heartened. How does the source use that?
Well, this is key. The source doesn't just report the quote. It interprets it. That statement of being heartened is framed as a direct message of approval to his troops.
Troops.
Yeah, turning public sentiment, or at least his reaction to it, into what sounds like a directive for some kind of covert group. That's a really significant rhetorical step the source takes to build its case.
And does the source claim he actually has troops?
It does. According to the New York Post, as presented in the video, Obama does have troops. It calls them an army of agitators numbering over 30,000.
30,000. That's a lot.
It's a huge number. And the claim is that Obama is ready to fight his successor at every turn, and that he'll command this army from a bunker, that's the word used, less than 2 miles from the White House.
A bunker. Wow. That paints a very dramatic picture, a highly organized opposition.
Very much so. And this whole setup, the source describes it as a highly unusual post-presidency. It quotes the New York Post again, saying Obama isn't just staying in D.C., he's working behind the scenes.
To do what, according to them?
To set up what the Post, according to the video, calls effectively a shadow government. And the stated goals are twofold: to not only protect his threatened legacy, but to sabotage the incoming Trump administration and its popular America First agenda.
Sabotage. Strong word.
Very. And the source makes a point of emphasizing, this isn't coming from some obscure blog. This is the New York Post. They're clearly using that to try and add weight and credibility to the claim.
Okay, so we've heard about the alleged intent, this idea of sabotage, and some initial proof points like the Flynn resignation and the interpretation of that quote. What about the how? Does the source get into the mechanics, the supposed infrastructure behind this shadow government?
Yes, absolutely. It pivots right there. It starts talking about the infrastructure that Obama is using. The assertion is that he's surrounded by his former top national security advisors.
Okay, advisors.
And that together, they've set up a communications network. And the alleged purpose of this network, intended to do one thing, and that is to actively subvert the Trump agenda. So it's presented as more than just individuals speaking out. It's portrayed as a coordinated, systemic thing.
And this goes beyond just, say, normal political commentary or opposition.
According to this source, yes. It specifically names an organization, Obama's former group, the Organization for Action, or OFA.
OFA, right. I've heard of them.
The source claims OFA was started back when his first run for presidency, and it just never stopped after that. So the picture painted is one of continuity, using an existing structure.
So not something created after he left office, but something ongoing.
That's the claim. This organization, OFA, the source says it has over 250 chapters around the country.
250, okay.
And while, technically it might be run day to day by his old aides, the source argues it's really being run by Barack Obama. The language gets pretty intense here, too. It asserts they're gearing up for war, framing it all in terms of active conflict.
Gearing up for war. That's stark. What about the nuts and bolts? Like the legal side, the money side of this OFA?
Good question. The source touches on that. It notes that, for tax purposes, OFA is apparently registered as a 501c4, which means it's shown as nonpartisan.
But the source disputes that.
Immediately, the video dismisses the nonpartisan label, stating Obama would never be involved with something nonpartisan. And it points out correctly that 501c4s don't have to disclose their donors. The source highlights that detail, suggesting, a lack of transparency.
Okay, so the structure is OFA, registered as a C4, leadership attributed ultimately to Obama, despite aides running it day to day. What about scale? You mentioned chapters.
And volunteers. The video adds that OFA has 32,000 plus volunteers worldwide, and financially, it claims the group has raised over $40 million since he was elected president.
$40 million and 32,000 volunteers. Those are significant numbers they're putting out there.
Definitely. The source then tries to link OFA's activities directly to disruption. It alleges that some anti-Trump protests organized by OFA turned violent, citing the New York Post for that claim.
Okay.
And this alleged violence is presented as part of what makes the situation, in the source's view, so damn dangerous. It connects this to a perceived complacency on the other side, what it calls Americans' willingness to just, Trump will handle it.
So the argument is that one side is highly active, even potentially violent, according to the source, while the other side is too passive.
That's exactly the contrast they draw. The source argues this perceived complacency is why the left is always on offense, even after losing elections. It's positioning the alleged shadow government activities as filling a vacuum left by the inaction of others.
And they keep hammering this on-offense idea.
They do. It emphasizes OFA's headquarters being just 2 miles from the White House. It repeats the 30,000 figure, calling them sycophants ready to protest, even claiming they're ready to get violent if necessary. It paints this picture of constant, intense activity. Claims they already have 400 healthcare-focused events scheduled for this year in 42 different states. Just relentless organization. 400 events. That specific number suggests a high level of planning, at least in the source's narrative. Exactly. And this level of alleged organization is then sharply contrasted, again, with what the source sees as a lack of similar action from other citizens.
How do they illustrate that contrast?
They offer what they present as proof. The source highlights that Obama's group, OFA, has already logged 20,000 calls to senators demanding that Obamacare not be repealed.
20,000 calls.
Yeah. And the video also claims OFA is partnering up with other well-known organizations. It names the Center for American Progress, Planned Parenthood, and a Soros-funded MoveOn.org.
So, alleging a network effect.
Right. Building this picture of a large, interconnected, and highly motivated machine. And the conclusion offered by the source is pretty blunt. These people are on offense and they don't lose, period. It's just this assertion of unstoppable effectiveness.
And you mentioned Michael Flynn earlier. Does the source bring him up again?
Yes, his resignation comes back as a sort of case study. The source flatly asserts it was a media far-left Obama-manufactured crisis. No ambiguity there. The video says, we know that Obama was behind that.
We know. Okay.
And then it pushes back against blaming only George Soros, which sometimes happens in these narratives. Instead, it points the finger directly back at Obama, saying he is guiding, directing, organizing for action from his brand new compound 2 miles from the White House. really trying to pin the ultimate responsibility squarely on him.
So a very clear accusation of direct orchestration.
Absolutely. So, wrapping up its argument, the source basically concludes that anyone who still thinks Obama's shadow government isn't real is just behind the curve.
Okay.
It hammers the numbers again. Over 400 Obamacare events already scheduled, over 250 chapters around the country, over 32,000 volunteers, and then the host in the video really escalates the rhetoric. Frames the whole situation as a civil war. Maybe not with bullets yet, it says, but certainly violent in other ways, citing boycotts as a form of economic war. It even throws in mentions of the U.S. Army supposedly training for action on U.S. soil and the Pentagon planning for massive civil unrest, seemingly to add this layer of, extreme gravity to the claims.
Wow. Okay. That was definitely a deep dive into the specific claims made by that source. Quite a detailed picture it paints.
It certainly is.
So, just to recap for everyone listening, the core claim we explored, coming from this right-wing news video and its cited articles, is that there's an alleged shadow government. It claims this is led by former President Obama, operating mainly through the Organization for Action, or OYFA.
Right, with its supposed 30,000 plus volunteers, 250 chapters operating from near the White House.
And the alleged goal, according to the source, is to actively undermine the administration at the time, using tactics like organized protests, mass call campaigns, and influencing events like the Flynn resignation. The source went so far as to call it a modern civil war. And again, just to reiterate, our goal here was simply to lay out what this particular source material claims. We're not validating it, we're not debunking it, just exploring the narrative presented.
Exactly. And, what really jumps out from this source, I think, is how much it emphasizes citizen action, or the alleged imbalance of it. It makes a big deal about the power of organized groups.
Yeah, that point about Obama's got 32,000 people on it who've already made 20,000 calls. That comparison was stark.
It really was. It contrasts that level of activity with this perceived lack of action from other citizens who the source is clearly urging to get more involved. And that leaves us with a pretty interesting question for you listening. Well, when you encounter these competing narratives, these really passionate calls to action from different sides, what does being well-informed actually mean for you? And maybe more importantly, what role does your own individual engagement play, especially when you're faced with claims about these powerful, maybe unseen forces at work?
That's a great point. What really stands out to you when you hear about these dramatically different levels of civic engagement described in a source like this? Something to think about.